Welcome to An Author Dissects a Narrative with your host, Husna Haze. In this captivating series, we will unravel the intricate tapestries of your favorite movies, TV shows, games, books, and beyond. Prepare to embark on a journey of analysis and exploration as we uncover the hidden gems and profound themes within these beloved narratives. Remember to show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing for a regular dose of insightful content. Let's delve into the realms of storytelling together. Let's check out the TV stats. This is Season 2 of House of the Dragon based on George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood. It's 8 episodes. Ryan Condal is one of the producers and writers, and it is produced by HBO. Welcome back to the Deconstructed Universe, and this is episode 3 of House of the Dragon. Straight away we open up with more small council meetings, both on the green side and the black side. I have to say that in general in House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, in general in George R.R. Martin's, books and universe, it's very much established that these characters is basically are rulers, and they never get anything done without, having or holding some sort of meeting. But in this case, we see that these meetings are really not productive. They're actually counterproductive for both sides. We see that on the Green Council, they're just arguing. They can't make up their minds on what to do. Alicent still wants to hold back. And then on the black side, we see that they're pushing Rhaenyra to let the dragons loose. Now, as the audience and as readers of the books, we know, hindsight 2020, that this is basically the canon event that takes and wipes out dragons for the Targaryen dynasty. And they never recover from it, because without overgrown, fire-breathing lizards to basically cow your enemies and your political enemies into basically bending the proverbial knee, it's pretty hard to get a whole kingdom to unite behind you when, number one, they don't like you, number two, you're politically illiterate, and basically no Targaryen can read a political room. I'm sorry, I'm going to stand with that. It's also hard for them to put down rebellions because nobody's going to be threatened with you, raising an arm and just basically marching forth as you see fit. Because let's face it, everybody, when you're on their playing field on the same level, it's like they see you for what you are, weak. Now, in that sense, Viserys was right. He was right in the sense that they do not control the dragons, and the dragons are an illusion for the Targaryen family. And it's something that Rhaenyra, I can see she's trying to hold off on it, but at the end of the day, she kind of stripped the magic and the illusion from the Targaryen family and the dynasty by allowing the dragon seeds to later on claim dragons. I don't want to go into that spoiler too much, but I just thought it's just spoken for. But bottom line is, we see that Aegon has basically, gone through the stages of grief, and he's now at the stage of revenge. He's out for blood, he's out for war. We see that the Brackens and is it the Blackwoods are basically fighting because they've always been fighting for generations. Nobody knows why, but they've been warring. Is it over land? Is it over something deeper? Nobody knows. Bottom line is, they kicked off the war in the Riverlands. I'm assuming, yes. We see Daemon arrives in the Riverlands as well to claim Harrenhal, and we see that he's afraid of eating anything, which I found just really funny. Here's this dragon rider. He's known as the Rogue Prince, and he's terrified of being poisoned. I just thought that was really, really, really funny, and something to a tidbit to write on the side. I felt like this episode did a really great job in character development. Now, in literature, character development is defined as how the reader can observe the character changing step by step throughout the narrative. Now, as we can see, like when writers write scripts, it's kind of the same thing, but it's really hard to portray on screen. But this is where the actors come in and they portray it very well. And I thought that this episode did a really great job at developing the characters of Rhaenyra and Alicent, and just showing the viewers that even though that they're friends, they have this bond, they both don't want to fight, they're both being pushed, but too many things have happened in order for them to essentially, call it a quits. In the sense of Alicent, like she can't exactly just say like, I'm gonna call it a quit, because her grandson was really murdered in his bed. And we also see that Rhaenyra, she's gone through a lot, she lost her son, but at the same time, she also can't really, call it a quits, because we see that at the end. Now, I'm going to come back to that at the end of this video. We were able to see within these characters' development, their loss, their hope, their sacrifice, and the changes and the commitment that they're making moving forward, coming for the season and the episodes to come. Early on in the episode, we saw that both Rhaenyra and Alicent were kind of holding back and holding on to some things of the past. We see this in the sense that, Alicent, she has a conversation with Helaena where Helena's like, I forgive you. Now, as the viewer, obviously I was like, okay, what is Helaena saying that she forgives her mother for? Is it she forgives her mother for basically what happened to her son, or putting her in this position, or in general just not being a great mother? Because we've already established here on an author dissects a narrative that Alicent is a terrible mother. She's a terrible mother. That's like a more deep dive for later on, but like overall, like Alicent was not there for her children the way that Rhaenyra or even Rhaenys was there for her children, because Alicent never had that motherly figure. We never saw that. Any relationship that she's had has always been politically charged, apart from the one she had with Rhaenyra. Till it was. Now, one qualm I have with House of the Dragon is that it's being advertised and branded as, this woman, girl empowered show. Now, as a writer and as somebody who's, written both male and female character arcs, I have to say that in the sense of this world, it's a very male-based world. These are female leads, female characters in a male-dominated world. We can see this, for example, in the sense that Rhaenyra is really arguing and fighting against her council of men who want to push her. I mean, at one point, they even suggest that Rhaenyra should, go flee from Dragonstone and leave the men to make war, which is a treasonous suggestion and allegation. And then on Alicent's side, we see that she's constantly fighting with her father, she's fighting with the council members, she's fighting with her sons to gain some sort of leverage and voice within this, war that is going on, this thing that basically encompasses her children, and she's at the center at, because she interprets what Viserys said at the end, of season 1, that Aegon is the promised prince. Now, we all know he's not. I stick with my guns that Daenerys Targaryen, Stormborn, is the promised princess. I'll write that down because I will go down with that ship. So it's very much a male-derived world with these women trying to, get a leg up in it and really push and fight for what they think is right. We see on Alicent's side that she's fighting for her son's right for the throne, which is legally he's entitled to as the firstborn male heir. And then we see on Rhaenyra's side, she was named heir. Her father never wavered in that. And, she's fighting for that in a male-dominated world. But then we also see her fighting with Daemon for control, because we see Daemon later on when he takes Harrenhal, he tells them to call him Your Grace. So we obviously see where Damon's head is at in that sense. And I just don't know how Rhaenyra is processing this. We saw it a bit in like the last episode where she realized that Damon never loved me the way that he loved me, the way that I loved him. She sees that he was a challenge when she was younger, and she really wanted to rise to that. She saw it as fun, enticing, romantic. But now she's older, she has problems, real problems, and she can't do that anymore with Damon. And she realizes he's not a team with her, so we see her fighting against that as well. So the posters and everything has shown that like it's Rhaenyra, it's Alicent, but in actuality it's Rhaenyra and Aegon, and not even Rhaenyra and Aegon, because we see that Rhaenyra, she never makes any moves to basically better Westeros for women. And when I say that, I don't want people to take it out of context and tell me like I'm reaching or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, for instance, when it comes to the inheritance of Driftmark, the Driftwood throne, we see that obviously, Lucerys is dead, and we see that, now basically Rhaenys and Corlys have a conversation, and Corlys is very much like, Joffrey doesn't even know anything about ships and sailing. And we see the Rhaenys is really pulling and pushing for Rhaena to be made heir of Driftmark, and Corlys laughs straight in her face. And we see that Rhaenys is just kind of like put off about that a bit in some sense, and we see Corlys is really not thinking. This is why I always think that in my mind, my theory is that Corlys always had another agenda when it came to the Iron Throne. We'll get into that more when we get into like Adam and Ilyn in future episodes, but you get what I'm saying. So we see that Rhaenyra doesn't, her first instinct is not to make Rhaena heir to Driftmark on her own right and volition. Do you know what I'm saying? She never makes any sort of move to be like, okay, like I need to at least make the Valerians stick by my side politically. I'm gonna offer them like, my heir is dead to Driftmark. We all know that he's not even a real Valerian, but like I will make Rhaena, I'll make her Driftmark's heir in her own right. She doesn't do that. We see Corlys is not pushing for that. We see that nobody is really doing anything like that. It's mostly about the men around Rhaenyra and Alicent, using them as cause and plot point to basically make war and plans for themselves in benefit for the men around them. And that's what I'm seeing, and that's my qualm with it. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, we've got a whole season for me to articulate my thoughts a bit better. So in that sense, this episode really was calculated and had a lot of Easter eggs and plot development for, readers who read Fire and Blood. We also saw that Rhaenyra is like kind of shouldering the blame for Aegon's son's death, which it was her fault, let's be honest. If she hadn't put out the hit on, what is his name? Aemond, like this wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened. But then like obviously I am taking this from the perspective of the show, not the books, because in the books basically Daemon took it upon himself to just like do that. But yeah, in this sense, like she did shoulder the blame for it because it was her fault. If she hadn't put out the hit on Aemond, it wouldn't have happened. So yeah, she has to have some accountability for that. Another thing that we see is that, Alicent, I'm really confused about Alicent, because at the same time I told you guys, like, I used to feel like sorry for her. She was just like a daughter in the world of men, and like what could she have done, but at the same time, like, she is this whole option of her just not wanting war, not wanting Kristen to go off to war, not wanting anything related to war to happen is just kind of like annoying me. But at the same time, I just kind of feel like she's in denial and she's holding on to that relationship that she had with Rhaenyra, even after her grandson was slaughtered. Guys, he was slaughtered. And, another thing that I have is, like, you see that Rhaenyra comes into King's Landing. We've seen that Daemon has already come into King's Landing. And you're not changing up the security of King's Landing at all. Like, at all. That just, like, boggles the mind. It boggles the mind that, your enemies can come and walk into the city and, you do nothing about it. And I feel like she chose Rhaenyra over her children in the last scene, but I'll get back to that as well. Like, hopping around from place to place, I need to get like a better structure for my reviews and analyses, because like my mind just running a mile a minute, and I'm not like those reviewers that you guys usually watch, because I don't get the episodes before anybody else. I watch them with all of you guys, and then I sit down and I just basically go off my notes. Not a lot of notes, just like 3 bullet points, and that's about it, but you get what I'm saying. So we see that in the beginning of the episode, right at the start, we saw that Rhaenyra and Rhaenys had a conversation, and we see a little bit more about the dynamic with Rhaenyra and Rhaenys. And I think later on we saw that Rhaenys is playing for the Driftwood throne. She really wants one of her granddaughters to inherit the Driftwood throne. We also see that when they hear about the Brackens and the Blackwoods, we see that Rhaenys is like, hotter heads have prevailed. The Brackens and the Blackwoods probably don't even know why they're fighting. And when this all goes to basically flames, when this all goes to flames and like explodes and blows up in our faces, we're not even going to remember like why we started this fight. And I thought that was like a really good tidbit to have, because at the end of the day, like, she made some great points. Was it when Aemond basically killed Lucerys, or was it when Lucerys took Aemond's eye, or was it when they put out a hit and killed Aegon's son? We don't know. We also see Larys Strong. We see him basically manipulate the hell out of Aegon into not going and flying off to war, and I thought that was nicely done. We see that Aegon is just like eager to just get on Sunfire and just like go and like burn some stuff. And we see that nobody wants him to do that, because first of all, we don't know if there's a Maelor, because there's no mention of Maelor. We see that he's a drunk, he's appointed new Kingsguard, and we see that the Kingsguard are not really taking their oaths seriously. We see that he's not really taking himself seriously, and we see that also Alicent keeps going on about Aemond, what my son is. Like at the end there, she was like, what my son is. And I just think like Alicent, like, what Aemond is. He's your son, okay? And however he turned out, you're kind of like have to blame for it, and like Viserys is like 65% to blame for it. Well, okay, the math is not mathing, but you get what I'm saying. So we see that Rhaenyra sends off her children to, Jane Arryn foster, and we also see that she talks about Prince Regil trying to get Rhaena to say like, you need to take the kids and even go as far as like Pentos. And we see that Rhaena feels very left out. She feels very much unheard. I mean, I can only imagine to be a part of that family with Daemon Targaryen as your father, and you're not a dragon rider, and he values dragon riders, and you don't have a dragon. It turned to stone. The only person that ever saw you and understood you was your mother, and she died. And then, right after, like, your mother's not even been buried, and your father is, marrying his niece and taking you off to Dragonstone, where you will basically feel left out in a family of dragon riders. So I can only imagine how Rhaena feels, because we already saw that Baela says that sometimes she hates her father. Now imagine that, but you don't have a dragon, you basically are like the forgotten daughter of Daemon Targaryen, and then your stepmother just basically send you away to nurse her, what, like 3 children. Even Corlys was like, I would rather die than become like a nanny for some nursemaids. And I thought that was just like shady as hell. Corlys, that was shady as hell, because that's your granddaughter right there. So yeah, we saw Kristen Cole as well, like he was just like a simp. We saw Alicent's brother, he's a douchebag. Alicent's brother was just like so funny, and we also saw that Kristen got a bit jealous. So yeah, that was fun to see. We saw that, you know, they went off, and when they went off, we saw that they had an engagement with Moon Dancer, who, you know, almost basically burnt them up to a crisp. So we saw all of that, and then we saw, obviously, you know, Mysaria was like, I want to become your Master of Whispers, and she wants to get back at the High Towers. And at this point, I'm just like, everybody's in for an agenda, you know, whatever. We saw Daemon. I want to talk about Daemon. Now, Daemon goes to Harrenhal, and I think we saw Alyssa Rivers. Now, we see Daemon, obviously he's like afraid to eat food, and he's very much having a very ominous, I hope I'm saying that right, ominous experience at Harrenhal with, you know, seeing visions. He sees, you know, his dead nephew, and he sees his niece, the younger Rhaenyra, and we see that, you know, I'm assuming it's Alyssa Rivers, who basically says you're gonna die in this place, which we all know what happens, but obviously we see that. We also see that Harrenhal bends the knee pretty fast, because, you know, there were like, this place was hard to burn when Aegon the Conqueror came, and we're pretty sure Larys had something to do with his father and you know, his brother perishing, because it's even hard to light fires here in the summer, let alone in the winter. So we see that, and, you know, I watched the behind the episode, and we saw that they're trying to bring in like a more supernatural magic end to that, and, you know, it was what it was. It was just some flashbacks, some hallucinations. We saw that. So we see like Daemon's very much on his toes. We saw that Hugh the Hammer is basically Daemon's younger brother, or is he's like, well, younger brother. He's Viserys and Daemon's younger brother. We see that he's on Rhaenyra Targaryen's side, and we saw that basically Aemond got into it with Aegon at, what was it, at the brothel. I also want to go back to Helena, because it really broke my heart to see her trying to justify her son dying, trying to rationalize it for herself so that she can move forward and accept it. At the same time, I was just like, okay, like, as long as she's like feeling better, but I don't know if you can feel better after something like that. But we saw her struggling and trying to make sense of what happened to her and her child. She's like, you know, the small folk, they lose their kids all the time. Babies are so fragile, you know, it's only natural. Some of them don't even make it to out of their cradles. And I was just like, Helena, that all may be true. You still didn't deserve what happened to you, nor your son. Okay? So we see a little bit more of Helena, and I've said it before, I want to see Helena be a moving force and a narrative within her own story, not a plot point or wallpaper and background for other characters, i.e. like Alicent. I really want to understand further what she forgives Alicent for. Now, on that sense, there is what is there? There is a theory that basically because Alicent's staff were all hired by Larys, and because Larys kind of hinted that he knew that she was getting down with Kristen Cole, that basically they let it happen to Helena on Larys Strong's orders to punish Alicent because he's kind of mad at her that she's, screwing Kristen Cole, and also Kristen Cole, like, he's a terrible guard and he's a terrible hand as well. So it's just whatever. And Aemond, I don't know what it is with Aegon trying to push his brother all the time, but Aemond has got his eye on the throne. He's very hurt in his feelings, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like, what is wrong with these kids? What is wrong with Aemond? What is wrong with all of you? Like, I just can't stand Aegon. I just want him to stop taking things not seriously, because I still feel like he's not taking things seriously. He's like, I'm good, I can fight. I'm as good as any of them. It's like, Aegon, right now you're a drunk, okay? We don't see any kingly traits within you. We did what I did in the first episode, because you were trying to be diplomatic and trying to do the right thing for the small folk, but obviously as a leader you just can't be saying yes to everything that your peers ask you for. But you were trying, but now you're I don't know. We'll see about his character arc. Bottom line is, like, that's the theory, that Larys let it happen, and basically Kristen didn't have guards around because he didn't want anybody to know that he was banging Alicent. So all in all, I give this episode a C, a rating of a C. I'm sorry, I know I've given these episodes 3 C's, but honestly, if I could, I would bring this episode down a notch, in the sense that I didn't enjoy it. I'm sorry I didn't enjoy it, but I did think that the character development was A+++, because we saw at the end of the episode with Alicent and Rhaenyra having that conversation that they very much came to terms with. It's gone too far for either of them to back down. Rhaenyra is like, I'm gonna fight for my throne because my dad never let me down, and Alicent is like, well, too much has happened now, like, for me to even start anything. So both, I think, just came to a realization that it's war. It's full-blown war. And if from this episode I still see Alicent just saying, like, we don't need war, like, why are you going here, why are you going there, like, I'm gonna literally want to reach through my screen and gouge her eyes out. The bottom line is, it was a C episode, and it's great. We're gonna see a lot more dragon battle, and I just feel like we saw a lot more of Rhaena, and I think Rhaena is not really keen on what's her name, Rhaenyra, because she was just like, wow, you want me to look after babysit your kids? And not only that, but like, Rhaenyra was like, I want you to do it of your own free will. It's like, girl, what kind of... Welcome to the end of the video, and thank you very much for making it to the end. Make sure you check out Vertigo Honor Bound by Blood, the first installment in the Vertigo book series. It is set in 2095 at the heart of the Imperial Champion regime, where Emperor Gregory Champion rules over Earth and the colonies stretching out across the solar system, where there is a virus called the Megavirus that has mutated and changed the political landscape of Earth. This is a story about factions, about coming of age, about the importance of being firm in what you believe in a world where bloodlines matter.